It's a historic defensive line class. Now, which one is better? Are the edge guys better? Or the interior guys better? I don't know. I'm going to ask Brendan in a second. But the first thing we're going to do, we are going to rank the edge guys first. So that's where we're going. I'll ask you right from the jump, Brendan. Is it a better edge class or is it a better interior class?
I think it's a coin flip, Adrian, to be honest with you.
Oh, come on. You got to bang the table for something.
Shoot. All right. If you're
flip a
making
coin, you want to just flip a coin?
if you're gonna make me, Adrian, I'm gonna say it is top heavy more at the interior than it is at the exterior. And
Okay.
the big reason I think that, Adrian, is because I think there's a lot of guys who can play on the edge or inside, but I feel more confident about some of these edge guys, and I'm going to talk about who they are in a moment here, playing at a 3-tech, which is the inside defensive tackle, head up or outside shade of the guard, more so than being the outside defensive end. So I would say, Adrian, I'm more confident about the top half talent interior than I am about the exterior.
I'm curious to see if the Eagles draft an edge guy. I mean, obviously they just brought back Brandon Graham for 3 more years, but maybe they draft an edge guy who is going to be the guy that gets the extension after Brandon Graham. We shall see.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair there. I think that's a very real conversation. I think there's also, maybe a little bit of thought of, are we really happy with the recent draft pick we made and on the edge as far as being the future edge rusher? I agree with you, and I think Malik Jackson too, Adrian. I think he's more of a short-term fix despite the movement and the great talent he is. I think he's probably more of a 2-year window than a 5-year window.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Okay, all right. Let's just get on to the rankings now. And, some of these prior shows, I've been kind of all over the place. Running backs kind of all over the place. Wide receivers all over the place. Quarterbacks all over the place. But I feel like the edge guys and the interior guys, they're pretty much set in stone, a lot of these. Nick Bosa is the number 1 guy.
I think there's more of a concrete kind of top 6 to 8 kind of people would have, and then people are just kind of shuffling. Versus the other positions, I think you have a larger wiggle room, but I think you also have that wiggle room because you're not as confident with a lot of these guys. But as far as the top edge guy, Adrian, you said it right off the jump. Yeah, it's absolutely Nick Bosa. He was a top edge guy a year ago from today, so he's still the top edge guy this year.
Yeah. Hand technique, power, explosiveness, bend. He's going to be a double-digit sack guy in the NFL. He's my top player in this class. Now, the question I have for you is this. Is he going to be his brother? Because I think his brother, he's got a more chiseled frame. He's got more size. I don't think he's going to be Joey, but Nick Bosa brings it too. He's got that motor as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, look, it's always shitty when you compare guys to their sibling. I mean, because then you're like, oh, you better than your brother. Everyone's different, But at the same time, if you get even 3/4 of what Joey is, you're going to be really happy the team to draft Nick here. The biggest concern, if I'm going to be the glasses half empty type of guy here, is the fact that injuries. Season-ending core injury in 2018, also had an ACL injury prior to that. I think it was the senior year of high school. So there is a little bit of a concern there. And obviously you look at Joey. Joey also has a little bit of an injury kind of check marks there. That said, I still think if Nick Bosa misses 2 or 3 games a season, I still think he can be a 10-sack guy. So that still tells me, he's worth a top 2 pick in the draft, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we'll see how the rest of the rankings go. My number 2 guy is Josh Allen. So we know about the production, I would think, for a lot of you guys. So 17 sacks. 21 and a half tackles for loss. The dip and drive, bend off the edge. Josh Allen is my number 2.
This is a tough one for me, Adrian, because when you look at Josh Allen, if you look at a lot of his production comes against kind of lackluster competition. I mean, if I put on his tape of him playing against Alabama, it's not the same production that you're going to see when he's playing for our Vanderbilt. So, I mean, if you box score scout him, you're going to say, okay, yeah, he has a lot of it. But when the lights were brightest, it wasn't obviously awesome here. The other thing I kind of circle with him is he's still very much developing a lot of his pass rush skills.
Yeah, definitely.
He kind of reminds me a lot of like I think his floor, like his worst case scenario, is like Cliff Harris, who got drafted out of Mizzou and went to the Miami Dolphins. Is a guy who
Charles Harris.
Charles Harris. Thank you.
Still call him Cliff. That's so funny.
I did it like 2 years ago, and I've just
You called him Cliff Harris the entire draft process. It was hilarious.
Well, he's still that's still his name in my mind apparently, but he was a guy who won pretty much exclusively off of speed and was still developing his pass rush skills and never did. So that's my only concern I have about him. The flip side, he's more than athletic enough to be a stand-up, a stand-up outside linebacker in a 3-4, which I think is more of a fit for him. Being that he's 6'4", 230, he's not really going to be a defensive end for the Philadelphia Eagles. But the truth being, he's going to be a top 10 pick anyway, so he won't be there for the Eagles anyway.
Yeah, I think he's a 3-4 guy because of his ability to play the pass, to be able to drop back in coverage a little bit. So I think he has a little bit of that because of the athleticism.
Yeah, absolutely, Adrian. I think that's completely fair.
So there we go. All right, my number 3 guy. We're talking about this pre-show, and I had to ask you if I was, putting this guy too high. Because when you watch all these guys back to back on the tape, when you're watching them for the last time, you really see some differentiation. And this one guy really just stood out to me, Brian Burns out of Florida State. So you want to see a guy who can really turn the corner, body control, balance, all that stuff. Now, he's not the biggest guy in the world. We kind of talked about it pre-show. I kind of made the comparison. He's built like a small forward. He's got this inside-outside type counter move that's outstanding. Brian Burns really popped for me. I'm going to put him at number 3.
You know what? I like that, Adrian, because he is a really, really explosive athlete here. So let me kind of give you my number 3 guy. All right, my number 3 guy is Ed Oliver. And
did you put your number 2? Actually, I might have skipped your number 2. Did I?
No, my number 2 was Allen. I agree with you.
You had Allen too. All right.
Because I think his upside is really high. But again, he's a 3-4 guy. So if you're a 4-3 team, you probably have him lower.
Yep.
All right, so let me give you my number 3 guy. So my number 3 guy that I talked about is Ed Oliver. I think this whole notion of him sliding is a complete farce. I think it's a bunch of BS in my personal opinion. When you look at Ed Oliver, if I'm going to be the glasses half empty guy, he was playing a lot of nose tackle at Houston. Yeah. So naturally, he's not going to have the production. But to me, that's not his position. I think he's a 3-tech, or if you want to kick him out the defensive end, he's more than athletic enough. A lot of people are going to say, oh, he's a little small. Okay, he is. He's 6'2", 290. That's fair. You know who else is pretty small? Brandon Graham, who's 6'1", 270 pounds when he came out, and he went in the first round here. And he's obviously just as productive, but I think Ed Oliver is twice the athlete that Brandon Graham is. So to me, Adrian, Ed Oliver is my number 3 guy, but I think his best fit is going to be on the inside. But if you were a 4-3 team, want him to play defensive end, I still think he can get you that 6+ sacks consistently.
Yeah. I put him as an interior guy. So he's not on my edge rankings, but there it is. He's going to be very high on my interior rankings. I'll just say that. So there it is. All right, so now on to number 4. And this is where we get Montez Sweat. So we know about how he just tore up the combine, 4.41, 40, 36-inch vertical, 7-second 3-cone drill, 4.29 second short shuttle. So you got all the testing marks, and then you pop on the tape. He's got it too on the tape. Now the thing about him as well is his arms. He's got these mammoth lengthy arms, 35 3/4 inch arms. It's huge. So I think because of his NFL ready body and his athleticism and that length, it makes him a high floor player.
I hear what you're saying there, Adrian. So my next guy I have, and this is going to be kind of a dependent thing. Personally, I don't think Rashawn Gary's an edge guy. I think he is more of an interior guy. And I say that because Rashawn Gary, at least when you watch his film, doesn't have elite change of direction ability that you really want to see in the edge guys. So that's maybe where a little bit of a concern I have at Rashawn Gary as far as being an edge. Hence, I'm pushing him more to the inside. Therefore, my number 4 guy, I agree with you, Adrian, is Montez Sweat. 6'5", 241, long, explosive level dude here. I mean, his Senior Bowl, he was straight up putting offensive linemen in coffins and burying them. So, just a nasty, tough SOB off the edge. The flip side here, he does at times, to me, look a little stiff. Like if he has to counter spin or if he has to all of a sudden change directions, it's not as fluid as a motion as you would like to see. But at the same time, when you're 6'5", it's much harder to be fluid and changing directions.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So number 5, I did put Rashawn Gary here. I didn't put him inside. Maybe I should have put him inside. But all right, whatever. Well, with Gary, you didn't talk about the hand usage. So I'll just talk about that. Really powerful striker, upper body strength. I got some length there. So that's what I'll add for Rashawn Gary. He's my number 5 guy.
And that's totally fine. Like I said, I mean, when you look at edge and D tackles, a lot of times teams will go back and forth. Like, for perfect example, I think Ed Oliver's more of an edge, can play edge. Adrian thinks, Gary can. And that's fine. This is like a good exercise that you guys are seeing that happens in real live draft rooms. So my number 5 guy is Clelin Ferrell here from Clemson. His hand usage to me is every bit as good as anyone else in the draft, including Bosa. He is a very, very explosive guy. He is more of the traditional defensive end in the 4-3, being that he's 6'5", 260 pounds. I think he's probably a guy that's going to go just before the Eagles, late teens, early 20s. But if the Eagles were to trade up for an edge guy, he would be the most likely fit as far as scheme fit and also when he's going to go in the draft. That said, I don't think this is the right move for the Eagles to trade up for an edge, guys. The flip side I'm going to kind of criticize him for, burst is not elite. I mean, a lot of times when you go back and you watch tape, especially when you watch defensive linemen, best practice for you guys to do is as soon as the ball is snapped and the quarterback has it, pause it and look at who is the first helmet moving forward and low. And Colin Ferrell wasn't consistent at that, so that is a little bit of a knock for me. But when he gets in his pass rush and his hands are moving, he is a dominant edge guy.
Is there a possibility that you can get a first-round type talent in the second round in this draft because of how deep it is at D-line?
I don't think so, to be honest with you, Adrian, because it's like it's not a loaded quarterback class per se, right? So typically when we have conversations like this about how can first-round guys go in the second, usually it comes parallel to there's a lot of quarterbacks that are really, really worth it to go high. I think we're still going to see 4 quarterbacks go probably in the top 15 to 17 picks. But I think after that, Adrian, we'll see a big run on defensive linemen. So I don't think you're going to see a first-round talent guy going in the second round unless Jeffrey Simmons, he's the one exception, unless a lot of teams are saying, with the knee and with the off-the-field stuff, being that he's a defensive tackle, maybe he goes early second. But if he goes second round, Adrian, he's a guy teams will trade up to get for, in my expectation.
Yeah, I can definitely see that for sure. Yeah, because I bring up that point because I remember the cornerback class from 2 years ago was historically great, and you were able to get some guys that were like first-round grades in the second round. And even the running back class from a couple years ago, guys like Joe Mixon, for example, going in the second round. But it seems like some of these edge guys there's so many of these top 10 type talents that I just don't see it as well. So that's a good point. Who can you get in the second round? Because the Eagles are going to have 2 second-round picks. So if they don't go edge or D-line in the first round, who can they get in the second?
So the 2 guys that I would put down here is Chase Winovich from Michigan, who I'm a huge fan of Chase Winovich. I mean, when you watch Michigan's tape, you could really make an argument that he's the best player on Michigan's team, and he's going to be probably the 3rd defensive player for Michigan drafted here. His thing is, it's funny, like going into the combine, I think everyone said the same thing. Gym rat, hard worker, motor, all effort. Really what we're saying here is he's white. I mean, those were the code words for saying he's a white tryhard. But you put on the combine, dude is moving. He is athletic. So the problem with Chase now becomes, because he's 6'3", 250, at first people said, oh, well, he's not athletic enough, so he has to put his hand in the dirt. Not anymore. If you saw a team like the Tennessee Titans, the Baltimore Ravens, teams are 3-4 heavy teams, draft him in the first round, that's not a surprise to me. I think his talent probably shows that he's more of that late first, early second, but I think he's a potential guy who could slide a little bit because of those prejudices that we all see of try hard, work, junkyard dog, all the code words. The other guy, though, Adrian, and this is the guy that if I'm the Eagles, I am hoping – if I don't go defensive line the first, the guy I'm hoping for is going to be Zach Allen, because Zach Allen is a guy who can play up and down the defensive line. 6'5", 280. Obviously, he can play on the inside, but he also plays a lot on the edge. He is all effort, all motor. He's I think he's a really high floor guy. I think he's going to be really, really safe. I don't think Adrian will ever be a guy who will have 10 sacks. But you know what? If you put him next to Fletcher Cox and he gets 6 sacks, that's still really freaking good, because Fletcher's probably going to get 10 plus anyway. So to me, Adrian, Zach Allen would be the guy in the second round that if I'm the Eagles, I would love to get because of his versatility. All
right. I got one more player for you to ask about, and then we'll close the show. The NCAA's all-time sack leader, past Reggie White. What are your thoughts on Jaylon Ferguson?
Jaylon Ferguson, man. This is a really interesting one, because typically if you look at stats in college and how they translate to the NFL, typically sack production is number one. Usually that's the thing that translates the most. 6'5", 270, edge guy, but probably also can play a little bit inside as well.
Yeah.
The flip is Jaylon Ferguson is not as explosive as you would want. He's a power rusher. He's a bull. So that's the good thing, but he's not as explosive as you would want. So on the third down situation, when you know the defense or the offensive line is really going to get into a deep kick set, it's going to take him a little bit longer to get his power underneath him. I think, Adrian, he could be a guy that could be an Eagles fit. I'm personally more of a fan of Zach Allen's game.
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's it from me. I forgot to plug your podcast again. I always remember at the end when we're already 20 minutes in and people are already tuned out.
It's all good. Guys, if you're enjoying having me around, please go ahead and check me out. My podcast is at Burton TV. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Music. A lot of guests I've had on recently. Tyree St. Louis from the University of Miami, offensive tackle prospect. Several guys from Bleacher Report now. So if you guys enjoy it, please check me out there.
All right. So we're about to shoot another one, and I'm going to remember this time right in the beginning. So I'm going to do the intro, and I'm going to be like, all right, Brendan, tell me about your podcast. And that's what I'm going to do.
Sounds good, dude.
All right. I'm going to forget, though. That's Brendan Albert. I'm Adrian Petke. We're out of here.
Appreciate it.
Until next time in about 5 seconds.